Welcome to the Blooming Wand podcast. I'm Emily O'Neill, evidential psychic medium, intuitive healer, and coach. And while I typically focus on tarot-curated insights during full and new moons, this episode is a special dive into other areas of spirituality and self-care. Join me as I talk about the things that bum me up as an evidential psychic medium and spiritual mentor. I'm going to get a little vulnerable, so I hope this topic resonates with you. I'm so glad you're here. Let's dive in. Scrolling through social media has become disheartening to me as I see countless psychics, tarot readers, and self-proclaimed mediums engaging in unethical practices to gain attention. Some exploit the vulnerability of others by offering readings without consent or charging exorbitant fees. How many of you have liked a tarot creator and then all of a sudden you're getting spammed with these messages that say, "Oh, I feel your energy and I need to read you. Send me $20 and your payment information." And then those people then have your credit card information. Yeah, me too. It's so annoying. So that's one of the things that's driving me nuts is I'm a practitioner, and even I get people reaching out to me and asking to give me readings. And a while ago, somebody copied my entire Instagram account and then used it to scam other people. So depressing, right? There are also people online who claim to be mediums, and some of them actually really are. I know that they have the skill and ability of a psychic medium, and then they channel to see celebrities and start talking about them. And that just that really bothers me because there's no consent from the family. There's no consent, obviously, at all, and they're just sort of popping off at the mouth and giving information. And is some of it accurate and does some of it play out? Yeah, but at the same time, again, there's no consent, and that's something that kind of sticks in my craw a little bit. The other thing I see is culturally appropriative practices, and people don't understand the significance of certain things that they're engaging in. And there are some common ones, like people wanting to use like white sage to quote smudge, and that's a closed practice. There are other things where people use, I see this a lot too with the yoga industry, like yoga as a way to sell stuff that you probably don't really need for your yoga practice. Or there are people that take from certain sacred medicine journeys that should be done by, people who hold a lineage in said practices, and then they incorporate them into their own practices without there being any kind of appropriate kind of handoff there. I see a lot of that. So, right, we see these things all the time, and I think we have to hone a skill of being able to discern. And that's kind of why I wanted to share this podcast, is because I've had to develop that skill. And I really used to love those collective tarot readings where you could be like, if this resonates with you, then take it. And I would be claiming those readings left and right. And then something shifted in me, and I started to cultivate a more discerning eye and engage more critical thinking, especially when I was consuming spiritually oriented content or stuff that claimed to be spiritually oriented content. So, a lot of these unethical practices attract a ton of attention. In fact, some of them have some of the largest accounts that I've seen on social media. But sadly, they undermine the credibility of the entire field, especially of evidential psychism and mediumship, or even tarot reading. I mean, I could probably go on and on about how it can undermine a lot of practitioners who are trying to do the right thing. And this is why it bums me up. But I have to say, I didn't always feel this way, and there was a time that I consumed a ton of this content. I was fascinated by it until one day I thought, what's the point of all of this? And how is this helpful? And none of those readings I had ever claimed came true. And that's when I realized that I had fallen into the trap of sensationalism. And boy, is that easy to do. Wow. So easy. I had basically become brainwashed by a constant barrage of spiritual, in quotes, content on social media. And I'm not exactly sure, why the shift happened within me. I think I just started to think more critically about what I was consuming and why I was consuming it, the impact that it had on me, which didn't really feel very good. And I thought, if this isn't making me feel so good, it probably isn't making other people feel good. So, hence why I wanted to talk about it. Has this ever happened to any of you? If so, you're not alone, and that's kind of what I want to share with you is we're all doing the best we can with what we've got, and sometimes for whatever reason we start to realize maybe we have gone down a path we don't need to be on, and then we just readjust and act accordingly. And that's something that we do pretty much, I think, constantly. That never ends. So I want to offer that I try to take the high road when I see these things, and I certainly don't wish to engage in any attention grabbing or exhibitionist tactics to gain a following or clients. I frankly don't feel like I even need to, but I have to say, sometimes taking the high road feels like a thankless path. And I think whether you're a spiritual entrepreneur or not, we've all got values that we try to let guide us, right? And sometimes it does feel like a lonely road when we're trying to find our way in this world and align our actions with our values. Now, I feel like I see sometimes other people getting ahead by doing these things that grab attention. I mean, a lot of times these people will sell things to you or eventually end up pitching a product, and consumerism becomes the mode of spiritual content, and there's an intersection there that I find kind of interesting. But I try to remain steadfast to my principles, but I still get frustrated and disheartened. But there is another part of me that knows that taking the high road reflects character and values, that it shows my commitment to doing the right thing, even when it's difficult. And the difficulty for me just comes in feeling disheartened at the amount of content that's out there that probably isn't that healthy for people, or even that's potentially doing harm. It concerns me. And while shifting gears here, like it might not always be immediately rewarded. We might not be, quote, rewarded for doing the right thing or acknowledged for it at all. But sticking to my ethics and values is the only option for me. I ultimately know that it cultivates trust, respect, and a positive reputation. And I also know that sometimes I'm going to get things wrong. I'm going to fumble the ball, and I'm going to need to course correct and take responsibility. And I accept that as part of my journey. Sometimes I want to point out specifically like accounts or others who are doing things for attention and highlight the red flags that I see, but I know that engaging their content only makes it more popular. It kind of feeds the wrong beast. Plus, I'd rather lead by example. I'd rather lead by example. And it's my preference to call people in if they're open to conversation and dialogue rather than spend time calling out constantly all of the icky stuff. That said, when I feel this frustration kind of creeping in, I know it's important for me to focus on my own journey. Instead of dwelling on the actions of others, I create my own path. I set boundaries. And this usually involves blocking accounts that disturb me and limiting my social media time. Now, the funny thing is my frustration actually motivates and empowers me to continue to lead by example and be authentic in my actions. It's also a reminder to practice empathy for myself and for others. I try to understand the underlying reasons of why people might be engaging in creating sort of sensationalist content or just stuff that they know people will consume, even though it might not be good for them. And this can help me respond with compassion and understanding. Is this an easy practice? Not really, but is it important for me at least to continue to engage in it? Absolutely. And a couple of the things that have come to me is that when people do things online and they get a lot of attention, it sort of reinforces that they should be doing it, whether it's healthy or not. The other thing is capitalism, right? Attention can equate to money or selling products, and I do see that becoming a very tempting thing for spiritual entrepreneurs. And even putting the words spiritual and entrepreneur together kind of gives me a little bit of the ick, but again, I'm an entrepreneur and I'm trying to do spiritual things and I'm trying to do it in an ethical way, but should spirituality and entrepreneurship even go together? I mean, that's an interesting conversation in and of itself, right? So lots to talk about here, lots to dive into here. Ultimately, what I really constantly return to is I am not here to control other people's behavior, but I can control mine. I can control my own response. And by focusing on my own journey and setting healthy boundaries, I can create a more positive and fulfilling experience for myself. But sometimes it feels like a lonely road. Recently, I was meditating on this conundrum and I realized that yes, sometimes it does feel like doing the right thing doesn't get acknowledged or rewarded, but doing so does yield its own fruit. And taking the high road upholds my principles and self respect, and that's important to me. It gives me the opportunity to set an example and allows my actions to inspire others to do the same, even when it's hard. And deep in my heart, I know good deeds have a ripple effect that I may never see or understand, and that's okay. It doesn't mean that my impact isn't meaningful, and I know that I always feel better about myself and have a greater peace of mind and satisfaction when I stay true to my values. I'm coming to terms with the inner voice in me that says doing the right thing might not be rewarded, and maybe it doesn't need to be. I also consider that rewards may not be immediate, seen, or understood in tangible ways, but that sticking true to my values does have lasting benefits. So here are a few thoughts that come to me. Taking the high road can strengthen relationships and build trust with others. It keeps me in alignment with my values and it keeps me from compromising my principles. And it comes with a greater sense of peace and satisfaction. I think if I were to sacrifice my values, I can't tell you how guilty I would probably feel. It wouldn't make me feel good. And so, sort of sticking to them is actually easier. So, this is sort of my reminder to you and to myself because whether you're a spiritual person that's running a business or no matter what's going on in your life, there are times where we see another path and we see that maybe there's something a little bit seductive about it, but it's not in alignment with our values, right? This is something we all encounter. And this is my reminder to me and to you that the reward of staying true to one's values and principles does outweigh compromising them, and doing so gives us a greater sense of peace. And I'm coming to understand that this is kind of a form of rebellion, that following your heart and doing what feels right to you, even if other people are doing other things, we probably need more people doing that. Sort of following their own path, marching to the beat of their own drummer, understanding how their actions could potentially impact others. We don't operate in a void, right? And taking this approach makes me feel that I'm having a positive impact and I don't really need to know or understand how that might be so. I just have to keep doing what I know I need to do because it makes me feel like I'm being true to myself. And that's the biggest reward that any of us could ever get, is that we feel like we're being true to ourselves. And I just want to offer that if you like grounded, thoughtful, and spiritual content, then sign up for my newsletter. You can find me on Substack. You can find all of this at bloomingwand.com. If you click explore and go to connection, you can sign up for the newsletter, sign up for the Substack, listen to the podcast, anything that you want. And it is my intention to respond to your questions and to create educational content that supports you as you move through your spiritual journey. And I will say that I don't have all the answers, but I am armed with curiosity and a love of learning. I also do love to think critically and ponder things, and that's taken me far. So I hope you found this podcast useful. Do share your thoughts and feelings about any content that you've come across that you've once consumed and then began to question. I find this stuff fascinating and interesting. You can share your thoughts with me at emily@bloomingwand.com. I love to hear from you. Until next time, folks.